I'm Bret Englander, co-founder and director of sales and marketing. Really excited to have all of you join us to learn a little bit about how Cerno got started and how we have evolved over the last 11 years. I know that I speak for Daniel and Nick, myself, when I say it's a real honor to be able to have this conversation and connect with all of you. I think it's something that we wish as students and when we were launching into our careers, we had more exposure to. One thing that will become evident really quickly in this presentation, or conversation I should say, is that our story is not something that you will learn about as a student in design school or whatever you're studying. We have had I would say, the unique privilege of the three of us all grew up together and have been longtime best friends since we were young boys. The core of this friendship always was fueled by a shared passion for, first, I would say, just going on adventures, but often those adventures turned into projects and was all about building and designing things. One of the first projects that the three of us collaborated on together was building, having a little, Alyssa, could you advance? It's not letting me, sorry. One more, please. Yeah, thank you. One of the first projects that we ever worked on, and you can see it on the picture on the right, was building a sailboat together. I chose these pictures because not that anyone would question the authenticity of our story, but it does show that this really goes back a long time. And apparently that we spent a lot of our childhood not in shirts, which when you grow up in a beach town is often the case. But what I was saying is these boats, as we got older, it was really clear that Daniel gravitated toward the engineering, the logistics, the planning on these projects. And Nick always, really focused on the aesthetic side, but also understanding that things needed to be practical and buildable. I was the least industrious then and still am today, and often would find myself behind the camera, actually chronicling and telling the story of our adventures, which is really fun now because looking back 30 years, we have a ton of photos and videos of us from this time period. As we got older and things went from high school on to college, Daniel went off and studied mechanical engineering. Nick studied architecture. I actually studied journalism and then later worked in finance. And these different skills from day one became more complementary. And, after we graduated from college and all had some success in different industries, Daniel working as an engineer in manufacturing and Nick practicing and working as an architect, me, as I just mentioned, more on the business side of things, we decided to start our greatest adventure yet, which was launching Cerno. From very early on, I think we had the right balance of both ambition and naivete to not get discouraged. As anyone who's started any type of business, and not even a business, any project, that it never goes exactly according to plan, and you're going to need to have some thick skin to navigate all of the unexpected turns and ups and downs. And I think we did that well. As designers, as you all know, our primary job is to come up with creative solutions to solve problems. Being an entrepreneur, that's what you do on a daily basis. And one thing that's, exciting, and I think for Daniel, Nick, and I, each new product in its own way is a small company where you have to, once again, go through those steps that you went through at the very beginning, which is, all right, who am I trying to design this for? How am I going to actually build this thing? And then after you build it, how are you going to market it and create demand and sell it? We always focused on form and function, which Nick will elaborate on soon. A few more, sorry, slides of the friendship I'm not advancing. But understanding that although our lights really do kind of combine, I think, well, the form and function concept, that there is, a space for making just pretty things too. It's just not where we gravitated toward when we started the company. You'll also see when we get into Daniel's portion of the presentation, where he's going to take you on a tour of the factory, that we're completely vertically integrated, meaning we build, design, do everything under one roof, which allows us to maintain this great control of the process, our supply chain, but most importantly, the quality of the products, which are very much a product of our process. And I mean, Daniel will also speak to this, but at Cerno, above all else, it's respect the people that are making them, respect the process, respect the raw materials. And I hope of the many things that we can kind of bestow and share with you guys today, that sticks with you, because I think it's really important, and it will ultimately always end up producing a higher quality product. When you go through the factory, you'll also see that we use a lot of contemporary technologies, but we use a lot of other building practices that have been proven and around for 100 years. I think that it's important to remember when you're, launching a new product or thinking about it, that I don't use technology in an unnecessary way. I think often the fundamental kind of requirements of each product can sometimes get skewed and lost when people try to use technology for the sake of it being there, but not asking the question if it actually makes something better. And I think Daniel and Nick do an exceptional job of understanding some of our lights are simply just lights. They turn on and off and provide enough light for whatever function they're supposed to. Some incorporate technology in really creative ways. So just a lesson that we've learned and kind of embraced more over the years. And once again, you'll see when Daniel and Nick get into their section. As I mentioned earlier, and this is kind of in a little bit of a closing of what I was going to say, after you create these products, you have to sell them if that's your goal, if you are trying to be an entrepreneur. And that can be really scary because there's so many different ways to do that. It can also be capital intensive. And you can choose, thank you. Yeah, I will real quickly divert from what I was talking about. This is our first small factory. Not really a factory, a garage in Laguna Beach Canyon. Thank you for advancing it. And as that was right when we were leaving. So the team had obviously grown from the three of us at that point to, I think, about 17. And then we moved to a bigger facility in Irvine. And then now I think the next slide. Oh, thank you again for advancing my slides. I knew I was going to forget. These photos, I do want to talk about real quick. The one on the right is our original small shop in Laguna Beach Canyon. You can see Nick in the foreground working on a prototype, and actually in the background is Carlos, who's been with us for about 8 years. You'll see him in the metal shop when Daniel takes you on the tour. We're very hands-on. Nick and Daniel still spend most of their days going into the shop, starting their days in the shop and ending their days in the shop. And the reason we do that is because we feel like we can preserve intent, maintain quality, connect with our team, make sure they have a really clear picture of what they're supposed to be doing, and that they know that we're always available for questions. And it's the part that we love the most. It's the most fun part of what we do is designing and then making it. So to separate ourselves from the shop and the factory portion of it would be to take away one of our favorite parts. So yeah, on the left You can see a couple of our guys working on just sanding some parts, and then that's actually Daniel and Greg in the lower left corner. Greg's been with us from almost day one, master craftsman at Cerno. We can go on. Yeah, and this is our new headquarters and factory that we moved into last November. So from the original 400 square feet, then became 3,000, and then we grew to about 13,000. And then last year we moved into a facility of 20,000. You know, for us, having a headquarters and factory close to home is important. We love, like I just mentioned, being at the shop, but also just being in control of the entire process. So that's, I'll finish in a sec before we introduce Daniel. But what I was going to say about taking the products to market, I mentioned it can be scary and it can be capital intensive, and there's so many different ways to do it. Do you do it via trade shows, advertisements, engaging PR? Obviously, social media has become this incredible vehicle for sharing our stories and messages, but also daunting. How do you do it right? And in the age of influencers and all this stuff, who do you connect with? It's tricky, and there's a lot to navigate. But I think you can distill it down to something more simple, and that's I think we've had the luxury of being reminded about this throughout our journey, where all we really want to do is make beautiful, functional things in the United States, most importantly in our backyard in Southern California, and share them. So our messaging and our story is always, that's what it's about. It's about the friendship. It's about the love. It's about the passion. And I think when you are authentic and honest, and most importantly, have integrity in the way the stories you're telling, there's still a ton of opportunity out there. And I think back to our earliest days, and it was mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting. Every cliche you can throw at it as far as blood, sweat, and tears, they were all there, and they were all very real. But through that kind of whirlwind and craziness, there were so many amazing moments and memories. And I think Daniel, Nick, and we remember, I get emotional thinking about it. We remember our first showroom order and how exciting that was. You know, it was probably a few $100. And then our first big commercial project where, you know, now we were going to have 100 of our sconces in actually a dormitory for USC, University of Southern California. And then our first big hotel project. I mean, it was as shocking to us as anyone, like, wow, this is actually happening. And these milestones, they were reminders that we were doing something right, and there was a level of validation. But I think it's also really important to know that we still make mistakes every single day. And instilled in kind of our culture is this idea that we learn from them and we can continually improve and make that better, which is something Daniel will speak to you about in a moment. But I don't know, when I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have today, I was trying to put myself in your shoes and think of what could be most valuable to me if I was just starting out again. And I think the most important thing is you're not going to do everything right. There's going to be a lot of difficult, challenging moments, especially if you choose to start your own business. But if you do make a quality product, tell your story honestly and authentically, I think there is still a ton of opportunity. And, today's situation is nothing any of us could have prepared for. But when we started the company 11 years ago, although a different situation, it was a recession. It was when LED technology had just taken the lighting industry by storm. And all these, giant changes do create opportunities, and they create a need for new products, and they create a need for building things differently. And I think that is also an important thing to kind of look at and embrace during these, very challenging and trying times for all of us. So with that, I'm now going to turn the floor over to Daniel, who is once again co-founder and director of engineering and operations. and he's going to take you a tour of our facility, which, as I mentioned, we make it all at the building.
Hi, I'm Dan Wacholder. I'm one of the founders of Cerno, the Director of Engineering and Operations, and we're here at the factory. We're going to give you a tour. We're going to show you how we do things. A lot of what we're going to be talking about is lean manufacturing. It's a big part of the philosophy that drives the way we do things. It's a very big topic. I'm just going to scratch the surface. There's a lot more to learn about it that I'd love to talk to you about someday. But here we go, we'll start the tour. So we're coming in the front here. This is our lobby, where also a little bit of a showroom. We're relatively new to this building. We've been here about 6 months, so we're still in the process of getting it dialed in, but it's a great spot, and we're really excited with how this space came out. So now we're going to head over into the production area and show you how we make it all. So at Cerno, we are big believers in lean manufacturing, which is a production philosophy. It originally came from Toyota, from the Toyota production system, and it influences everything we do here. One of the main principles of lean is to have as little inventory as possible, to build things just in time when you actually need them, and to be continuously improving. So everything we do, we're trying to build an environment where people are encouraged to continuously improve and make the processes better, while also holding as little inventory possible so that we have the maximum flexibility to fulfill customers' orders based on what they actually want. So we'll show you that in action. This is Duke here, by the way. It's one of our engineers.
Hey, how's it going?
Just doing some organizing. This is something that we're always doing. A big part of lean is just constantly trying to keep things organized and improving them all the time. So coming this way, these are our main assembly cells where we build all of our products. Each cell builds a grouping of products. So for instance, this is the green cell, builds all of our Levo product line, our Libris. That's basically a lot of our bedside reading products. This is the orange cell that does most of our sconces. The yellow cell, where we do a lot of our pendants. You see Steve's working over there. So each work cell has a charge. You can think of each work cell as like a little miniature factory, and the charge is the leader of that factory, and they're responsible for keeping everything in order, for training other people to work in there, and just making sure everything is basically running well and constantly improving in that cell. This is Steven, who's our production manager. He kind of keeps everything flowing out here on the floor. So another big important thing you'll notice, we're starting this tour kind of at the end of the process with our finished goods, and I'm doing that on purpose because another big principle of lean is the concept of pull. So we're pulling work through the factory instead of pushing. So what that means is we try to never do anything until the customer wants it. So all of the demand starts with, we have an order, we need to build something, and then we're going to walk our way back through what happens. You'll notice there's no finished goods really in the factory except for what you see here, which is all product that's getting ready to ship today. So we're only building on any given day the things that are ordered on that day, or that are scheduled to ship that day. So this is the blue cell. The blue cell builds our Plura product line. So you'll see the process happens in a one-piece flow fashion, which is another important part of lean, is they build one at a time. We start with, they're building the shade there, the light engine. You can see Anthony is packaging here. And we put it in a box, and then we go back and we build the next one. So that's what you see here is, it's like a little miniature assembly line, just building our Pluras. The work cells have all the inventory that's needed to build the product, all the tools, everything's readily accessible. And all of our inventory is controlled by what we call a Kanban card. So these bins have all the parts in it, but they also have a card. And these cards trigger material to move throughout the factory. So they might trigger us to purchase something, they might trigger someone to build something, or even just to transport something from one place to another. So when I get down to the trigger quantity here, and this card is triggered, I take the card and I put the card in a mailbox. We've got these mailboxes all over the factory, and then our material handlers are constantly checking the mailboxes and then routing the card to wherever it needs to go. And like I said, that card might trigger somebody to purchase something, make something. In this case, this card is just telling somebody to go to a location and get 100 more of these screws and bring them back. For the things that are purchased after we've ordered our parts, the cards end up on this board here. So, and then they sit here waiting for the parts to be received. So everything you see on the board, these are all things that we have purchased and we're waiting on from an outside vendor to show up. Once the card shows up, or once the item shows up, it's matched to the appropriate card, and then the card and the items are taken back and put in the cell. So it's a real simple analog system, but it works really well for preventing us from running out of things and also keeping us from doing anything that isn't actually needed. We're not going to buy these screws unless they run out of them in this bin here. So yeah, working back through the process, you'll see this is Anthony here. He's doing some packaging. And here we've got Chris. You can see he's just finishing a shade. And again, here it is getting ready to be passed off to Anthony for packaging. You'll notice the Kanban cards are all over the place. Down here you'll see these are some of the diffusers, and these are parts we actually make here. But there's a card here, so when we get down to a particular level, that means the card is triggered. That card will get turned in, and we'll make more of these parts and we'll bring them back. So moving on from here, you'll see these wood parts that Chris is making here. We're going to see where those get made. So this is passing over into the woodworking department. You can see Eric. Eric's making one of our penna fixtures. He's just finished the glue up, getting ready to start on the finish sanding. And here's this is a work cell where we make the wood, that wood part you saw Chris working with. This is also a lean, continuous flow cell, where in one lap around this table, we get our raw material, we cut it, we put the groove in it. Here you can see Carlos is getting ready to, he's drilling the parts here. And then we just continue our lap around the table. They'll get, this is called a domino machine. It puts the dowel in there that joins it together. It'll get glued, and then it's on to assembly to get built into a fixture. So here we've got one of our CNC routers cutting one of our big Vallejo fixtures. It's a fun part. That's a solid piece of walnut, so this fixture is made out of one giant thick piece. So we like to use a good combination of high-tech equipment here and just old-fashioned manual craftsmanship. That's something we like combining the two. We're not afraid to use technology where it's needed, but we also appreciate the value of traditional tools and craftsmanship. So coming this way, we're going to move into our sheet cutting department. So this is where all of our sheet materials, so we store all the different sheets of different plastics and metals and wood sheet material. And then they come off of here. And then we've got two different machines here for processing sheet. This is another CNC router that's dedicated to sheet material. So here you see, this is Joaquin. He's cutting the diffusers. These are some more Flora parts. So these parts one of the cards was triggered. They're being cut here, and then they'll go back into the pluricell. So moving this way, this is another one of our sheet processing machines. This is our laser cutter that we use for cutting mostly sheet metal. This is Oscar. He's one of our engineers, and he's working on a prototype probably, but you can see through here he's cutting metal with the laser. Amazing machine. This also really helps with our lean and just-in-time principles because it only takes minutes to cut parts on this machine. So again, when a work cell triggers that they need a particular part, we've got all of our raw materials stored over here in stock. We're able to throw the material on here, cut it, and get it back to the work cell, sometimes in minutes. So moving on, this is into our machining department, so where we do mostly machining of solid metal parts. So we'll go see what Carlos is doing over here. So Carlos, this is Carlos, by the way. So he's making more plura parts. So he's making some of the metal parts that are used to hold up the shade on some of our larger fixtures. So again, he's starting from raw material, just some raw aluminum tubing, and you see he loads it into the machine. And this machine, another really cool machine. It's going to select the tool it needs. And then it's going to cut and drill and tap and do whatever needs to happen to the part. So yeah, when those same thing, that was another card that was triggered. When those parts are finished, they'll go over to the pluricell, hopefully to get built into fixtures today, maybe tomorrow. All right, so this is our Revlite work cell where we build our Revlite art lighting product line. This is another continuous flow lean work cell. We build one fixture at a time. It goes in a loop around this cell. This is George here. He's starting the process. It begins here. We stock all of our the extrusions and all the different colors that we offer the fixtures, all the different styles. So the first step, we cut them to length here. Then they move on to the drilling station here. Again, all the tools are all set up, ready to do this, so there's very little setup time. And then he'll make one lap around there, and that'll get all the parts cut and drilled. Then we come over here and the electrical assembly happens. You can see these are the LED boards that go into the fixture. So we'll do our electrical assembly. Moving on to final assembly will happen here. We'll package it and away it goes. So again, we're building one at a time, and this is a perfect example. Our Revlite product line, we have over 2,000 SKUs of all the different colors and styles and mounting options. So it would be impossible to hold inventory in all of those, but we also want to have really short lead times for our customers. So this allows us to build them as they're ordered and get them out the door really quickly. Okay, so this is a fun part of the tour. We're going to take you into our innovation design lab. So this is where Nick, who's our director, one of the other founders, director of design, this is where he does his mad scientist work. You can see all the creations he's been working on in here. Yes, there's Nick. So the concept of continuous improvement and continuous innovation is a big part of Lean, and for us, we do everything in-house. We try to keep everything under one roof, and this is a large reason why. We feel it really helps with the creative process. It helps with getting feedback from the manufacturing process to help inform future designs. So this is where Nick dreams something up, goes into the shop, tries it out, and some of these will make it to products and some of them won't, but it's just a continuous learning process. So yeah, that wraps up most of the tour. We're always available to answer questions. You guys want to reach out to us, and yeah, hope you can come visit us someday. So from that that presentation, you can see that we do a lot of the majority of the work associated with designing and making our fixtures in-house. And I just wanted to go a little bit deeper into why we choose to do this. So as Bret mentioned, what drove us to this work was our love for making things, not just designing them, but actually using our hands to bring them to life. So this has led us on our journey to favor the decision to make when a lot of make or buy decisions have come up over the years. And you know, choosing make is definitely not always the easier choice. It's a lot more complicated, and it can be more expensive up front. And it's also definitely not what a lot of the accountants or the business experts will advise you to do. But it has tremendous advantages that I've come to appreciate more and more over the years. So when you're immersed in the actual making, it's very inspiring, and it fuels creativity and the continuous improvement that I spoke a little bit about in that tour. The large part of this is because it minimizes the friction associated with trying new things. You know, when the tools, the materials, and the skills are all around you, it's so much easier to try things. I'm convinced that when you get your hands dirty, it leads to increased creativity and better design. An example of that is, you know, we run up often against what I call designer's block. It's, you know, similar to kind of writer's block's cousin, where you're working on a design and there's some detail you're just kind of stuck on and you can't figure out what to do. And what we've learned over the years is there's absolutely no better cure for this than just go build something, go build a prototype, go try something. As good as all of our drawing tools and modeling tools and rendering are, there's absolutely nothing better than actually making something. And this ties into another really important lean concept, which is what the lean community calls go see. And you know, this basically means that when there's a problem or a question, go to where it's happening and see it for yourself. This is really powerful, and it's obviously much easier to do when you're making the things yourself. So lastly, my last kind of case for making things yourself is it's just simply a lot more fun. And like I started with, that's why we chose to do this, because we love making things. And I'm just so convinced that when you make things and when the people around you get to see them being made, everybody has more fun. And there's no question that people do much better work when they're having fun. So that's kind of the main point I want to make. I could talk for days on lean and a lot of different topics, but if there's just one takeaway from this from me, it's go get your hands dirty, just try something, and try to keep the work close to you. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Nick, and he can share with you kind of his inspiration and kind of some of his design process.
Great. Hi. I'm Nick Sharon, Director of Design, and I'm up in our design lab right now. The space you see on this slide is where the whole process begins. And it's important to note, it's right next to the entire shop you just got a tour of. Is where I start to prototype new designs. You stay back on the person. It's where I prototype the new designs, and as a team, we collaborate and review ongoing design developments at all stages. As Dan mentioned, the vertical integration is so critical to our process. We do it all right here, so the feedback loop is instantaneous. Instead of having another shop make parts for us, where you would lose days or weeks just to try a certain component out, we go see for ourselves, build those skills ourselves, and what we learn, we get to let influence the designs. So while I'm up in this space, I'm constantly down, also prototyping in the same space that we'll end up building the fixtures. And It's a highly collaborative effort with everything from the conception of the idea through prototyping, production, shipping out the product, customer service, all happening under one roof. So that's super critical for us. Before I get into some history and influences, some of you know or think you know what you want to do professionally or what it will be like. You have a vision. Some of you are not sure. It's hard to have a crystal ball and predict what will happen, especially right now. But there is one thing that we can predict, and that's the work you're doing now, you will take with you. All the time you put in and what you actually put in your head right now will impact how you think and what you do later. Let me give you a few examples of how this happens. So I studied architecture, not product design. Next slide, please. So, oh no, sorry, go back. Prior to architecture school, I took an architecture class at community college, and we visited the Eames house on a field trip. This was actually Ray and Charles Eames's house where they had lived. The house was like nothing I'd ever seen before. There was this practical utility to the building, but a warmth and beauty as well to the overall feel inside. It's a really special place. On that field trip, I remember it was an epiphany for me. I was really hooked on modern design. That lack of decoration in the architecture and the logic of the building. It's a really great illustration of modern design, which is a really big pillar of Cerno's design ethos and principles, and hopefully seen in our fixtures today. Next slide. So fast forward, and I'm in third year architecture school, and we were asked to build a model of a residence at 1 inch equals 1 foot scale and use true building materials of the home we were studying. This was an infamous task at architecture school. As it happened, my group, which was made up of all the people left over after everyone broke into groups, we got stuck with the most challenging model to build by far, this house, the Sheets Goldstein house by John Lautner. It was larger than a king-size bed with a couple 100 pounds of concrete used when it was finally finished. Through the sleepless nights, working with a group of students I had not met until that class, trying to interpret the old plans, creating different forms to pour each segment of the structure, it was incredibly hard, a lot of fun, and just really, really fulfilling. I learned so much about just building things in general, as well as a ton about that particular house, and just about space in general. That's where the learning really happens, when you're fully immersed through hard work and collaboration. This is carried through to today. It's how we resolve designs at Cerno. Designing a fixture well is a very long and arduous road, and not every step is fun, but the feeling of fully resolving a design and building it, something that did not exist in the world before and now does, it's a beautiful feeling. It's one we really cherish here. You go back one slide, please. One more, please. So John Lautner's genius as an architect is just incredible, and it was the only way that I really could unlock the lessons was to dive head in and really, cut my teeth on having such an ambitious and challenging project. So that lesson of just like hard work and immersing yourself in it is something that's absolutely carried through to today. Next slide, please. One last just architecture point that I wanted to make. We also did an in-depth case study of the Farnsworth house. This is the one that really drove home the modern edict of design for me. Less is more. This is designed by Mies van der Rohe, but Mies and Le Corbusier are huge inspirations to me to this day. The way they push design forward, they reduce the designs to their simplest form. We labor over tiny details here at Cerno to resolve our design so they can exude this certain simplicity. Next slide. So this is me in Florence, Italy. I spent a whole year studying architecture there. It really helped me become a better collaborator and designer. I learned how to collaborate with Italian architecture students and exposed me to a totally different perspective. Academically, this year abroad got me out of my comfort zone and really pushed me. Collaboration is a huge part of design, and it's central to our work here at Cerno. It's a skill that must be honed. Design does not happen in a vacuum. It takes a huge team to realize these products. It's critical you can work well with others. I also want to say traveling and seeing new cultures and places makes you a better designer. So get out, experience new things as much as possible. So it's important to take what you're being exposed to right now seriously, because when you dive deep in, it will influence you and teach you essential things. All three of us and the team bring our previous experiences and knowledge to the table every day at Cerno, and that's what makes the work better. Now I'd like to walk you through what our design process was like for one of our fixtures. This is the Linus. It's a good one to discuss because it has outside influences. It's inspired by the ocean and boats, a nod to our roots growing up as friends on the beach and our love of boating. It has a bent wood structure under stretched fabric. The design process is never linear. There are many dead ends during development, very much the case with the Linus. I'm showing a small fraction of the different efforts it took to arrive at the final design. Here are a number of different crude prototypes. It can be easy to spend too much time, as Dan was mentioning, sitting in front of the computer, 3D modeling, drawing, when so much more is learned by often just building a tangible model. So those quick models just teach you so much. Here are some drawings of the Linus cross-section through its development. Here, I brought the design into Rhino to further study the form after empirically really arriving at the shape through building iteration after iteration. Here, I'm doing fine-tune adjustments to ensure the bends were totally smooth. The final adjustments were all made, not in the computer, but by building prototypes. The Linus was a big departure from our existing line, which really stays in that rectilinear language, form-wise. It was a challenge and a lot of fun. This next slide shows me sewing. Sewing's been a hobby for me over the years. It's really interesting to have a couple 2D panels sewn together and it becomes a 3D shape. It's a useful kind of allegory for how you can build something. And then here, we're showing a series of the Linus fixtures hung for a shoot we did. It's certainly one of my favorite pieces that we have completed. Now I'll show you some of our other designs. This is the Adesi. It's a desk lamp or nightstand lamp. Here we wanted to create a very simple analog fixture that accommodates your phone and charging cord. This is just launched. Now I'm going to just kind of run through, or Bret actually can help you. He can touch on a few important points, and we'll just run through quickly some of the other fixtures in the line, and still leave some time for the Q&A section.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we just wanted to give you guys kind of an idea of the breadth of the line. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk fast because we do want to give enough time for the Q&A, which should be starting just in a few minutes. You know, for us, it's often about identifying where these fixtures are going to live and understanding what the functional requirements are, the lighting output, how they're going to be hung, if there's seismic restrictions. I mean, all those things need to be considered. And throughout the line, you'll see that in almost all of them, they're addressed. And Nick mentioned the word resolve a lot in his message. We failed to tell you guys that Cerno in Latin, some of you may be fluent in Latin, we're not, it means to resolve. And that goes back to also when he was a student and just always, you know, in every crit, making sure the end goal was to resolve everything. So that's how we arrived there. I'm gonna run through these products really quickly and then we can hopefully answer some of your questions. These are our line, some, not all of them, but some of our wall sconces, the linear pendants. You see the Linus, which Nick just spoke about. One of the more recent ones is in the upper left, a penna using solid brass, leather, and walnut. This is the Vallejo, one of our really large floor lamps, weighs about 100 pounds, a lot of that in the steel base, which allows you to have that 10-foot cantilever with two solid pieces of walnut. I mean, the geometry, as most of you know, is also playing into how that thing stays standing and really sturdy. But yeah, that's two pieces of solid hardwood, big steel base. And I believe the total reach is just under 10 feet. Here are some of our other floor lamps, some of our desk and table lights. The bedside, I love this fixture. I think it really highlights Cerno's ingenuity, that combination of engineering and design blending really well. You've got the form, the function, the ambient light, and then the swing arm comes out to act as a reading light. Underneath, you actually have a USB charger. So really trying to think of everything that you may need while laying in bed. Amicus, one of our newest launch. This is a great exploration of Nick talking about designing something in 2D and understanding how the shape and the pattern will materialize in 3D. It was cut, the metal was cut on the laser. That is brass, and then has a wood top. Varus, you know, this one does a beautiful job of hiding the light source, but also putting out enough ambient light that it is very functional. Cassia, it's a flush mount and a pendant, as you can see here. A Lavo, a vanity, and here is as most of you know, I mean, a vanity light needs to function. It's meant to be it's more utilitarian than anything. And the way we created this was we used an indirect light source that bounces off a curved reflector and then emits this beautiful quality of light. So when you are getting ready to go out or whatever you're going to do, you can do it very well in a very high quality lit environment. Some of our outdoor products use concrete, stainless steel, powder coated metal. And this is just real quick showing you that outside of our standard line, we do a ton of custom. And although we love the standard product, this is exciting too, because it forces you and it challenges you to come up with solutions that you would never have come across in just doing the standard product. You've got those gigantic cantilevering kind of sconces slash pendants in the lower left. That's a law office in Chicago. The big round brass drums is actually in Times Square in Manhattan. And then you've got that gigantic, the second slide over on the top in the middle is a 20-foot long steel, wood, and actually drum cymbals. And that's here in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills. Okay, that is the slide portion of the presentation. So I will churn it back over to be original. And if anyone has questions, we would love to answer them.
Great. Thank you. That was such an insightful presentation. Students, we're going to jump into Q&A. As a reminder, you can find that function either at the bottom or top of your screen. So do send over your questions. What inspires your design style?
Nick, I mean, you can quickly touch on.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of what I touched on is my influences. Yeah, being immersed in architecture school and learning about modernism and form following function, and less is more, and keeping things simple. We're modernists. We do, you know, we've evolved some since just having a completely rectilinear, hard, clean, modern. But we like to use natural materials and be honest with the design. But yeah, that's really something I picked up in architecture school, and I look towards the design icons like Eames and Le Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe. That's what I really draw upon.
That's great. And what's your approach to trends?
You know, we have always kind of said, being out here in California, we're a little bit removed from kind of the hub of design, or the hubs, I would say, being New York and Milan. And we try, honestly, not to pay attention to them. I think you can get caught chasing rather than innovating if you are too preoccupied with what's happening now. And we feel like our greatest tool and the real purpose is to just be creating new and not necessarily creating what there's an abundance of now. So we largely, I think, are outside of that sphere of influence and try to remain there. It doesn't mean, I mean, it doesn't creep into the line some, I think it does, but it's not a driving force for us at all.
Great. How does the firm keep in mind the idea of sustainability while manufacturing the products?
Daniel, I can take a stab at that, or do you want to touch on that? Sure, yeah. I mean, we're always, I think one of the best things towards sustainability is try to make something that's not going to get thrown away in a year. So we really try our best to make things that are of a quality, both through the design and through the materials that will hopefully last. And then for materials, you know, we internally try to, when you make it all yourself, we're able to reuse a lot of drop and excess material internally. So we try to optimize our use. We pay a lot of attention to our packaging, try to use almost all paper product for our packaging. And then just in sourcing too, we're just thinking, it's in our mind all the time. Unfortunately, in the availability of material and the demand that's in the world, it's hard to be completely sustainable, but we try, we're willing to pay more for our material if we can find something that's more sustainable. So that's,
and just, I would just say, being as vertical as we are, you reduce a lot of the trips for trucks and boats and everything going from taking product from one place to the next.
And we repair our product too, which is another thing that we've always done. I really try to keep things out of the landfill, keep things from being thrown away.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Nick, I believe this one's for you. When going through the design process, how do you kind of balance the ability to manufacture on a large scale?
Honestly, there's a lot of times when I'm in the design process where I'll be using kind of my skills and I'll really understand intimately what skills we have down there and what our capacity is as the designs are coming about. And so from the very conception, we're staying kind of with more or less within our toolbox. We do challenge ourselves and create different kinds of forms and look for new materials, develop new methods, but oftentimes we have just a really good handle on what kind of scale we can achieve based on historically the larger orders we've been able to fulfill and those different products that have been manufactured at that scale.
Yeah, and I just to add real quickly to that, knowing your toolbox is, I mean, this is so important. This goes back to a lot, like even my time in engineering school, just seeing so many things being built by people or designed by people that had never built anything or didn't know what was possible to build or not. And that just wastes so much time in the process where you design impossible to make things or impossible to make profitably things. So for us, you know, although I don't dictate the designs, like Nick and I spend a lot of time just being aware of our toolbox and what we can do and let that influence the designs.
Yeah, from the very beginning of a sketch, I'm thinking maybe too much sometimes is what material is this and how is it going to come to life? Not just ideas that can't be built. That's, you know, it's so important. It's something that, I've been ingrained into my brain for forever now.
Right. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this, but we have a student that's interested in the Revlite. The question is, you're using LEDs in an intriguing way, not solely for lumen delivery and a more tailored package, but also for their technical ability. How do you approach a new form or purpose or product category?
I mean, we could talk about that for hours. It's a great question. And it is really complex because you're often trying to balance quality of light and performance. And often the specifiers can get caught up with one metric where that might be light output, but that might be neglecting to get the output they want. You're going to seriously compromise the quality of light that's coming out. It might be too harsh, or, you know, be what we often refer to as a glare bomb that you don't even want to look at because it's so bright to achieve the output. And specific with the Revlite, performance and quality of light dictated that process 100%. We had three kind of pillars that we defined when we started that, and it was the quality of light and even illumination. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't hot spot in one spot. We wanted the entire piece of art to be really well illuminated. We wanted it to be a very thin profile, and then actually the color rendering. So selecting an LED that could render colors better than any other of the LEDs on the market. And at the time, because we developed that product 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of options. Today, the technology has really, really grown, and there are a lot of different options for very high quality LEDs. But that's a great question that all three of us could elaborate on. And if whoever asked it, they want to email or talk, we can go into more detail, but there's a lot of layers to that one.
Great, thank you. How do you push yourself to think outside of the box?
You know, it comes from constantly designing. The space that I'm in up here, it has a ton of things that never make it too far, but there's this just curiosity about trying things, and we're set up to do that. We can go see and try. But I'm encouraged by Dan and Bret. Bret often will talk about a category or something he's learned in the marketplace, and Dan and I will constantly be talking about other materials and methods that seem interesting to us that we haven't used yet. But so, I mean, that's outside of our box, as in like our toolbox. But otherwise, yeah, it's a real exploration, a lot of dead ends, and it's just that fire of curiosity helps push you forward and makes you curious to try different things that are really different, that are outside of the box.
Absolutely. Being friends, going into business together, I'm sure has its range of challenges. What for you guys do you feel have been the drivers of success in balancing that relationship?
Respect. We wouldn't have gone into business together if we didn't have a tremendous amount of respect and trust with one another. And I mean, you know, like I said earlier, we had the luxury of knowing each other from when we were little kids. And honestly, that's a lot more visceral than a calculated adult approach to a relationship, right? So if you can get along through all those crazy, I mean, everything from being, you know, literally preschool all the way up, you get to know someone really well. So from day one, I think we believed in our differences and how they complemented one another, and we respected each other. And it's not easy, and the relationship will evolve. I think in some ways we're closer than we've ever been, but it's different than it was when we were just, you know, hanging out in middle school, high school, college, and those times. So it's, once again, happy to elaborate. It also, all these questions are great, and there's a lot there. So I'm trying to be somewhat succinct.
Thank you. On the entrepreneur side, what do you feel would be the best piece of advice you could give the upcoming generation who wants to open up their own firm?
I mean, I just want to, I mean, I've kind of reiterated what I said already. I would just say, just try it. Just try something. Get your hands dirty. Just show up. You know, just showing up to the party is such a huge piece of the puzzle. Just actually taking that step of actually trying something is, I know that's kind of an obvious thing, but most things die at that point just due to the lack of just taking that first step and trying it. I mean, Bret, I don't know what you wanted to add. But.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Just, and know that it's not going to go smoothly. If you think it's going to be this easy ride, then you're in for a bumpy one. But I mean, we knew it wasn't going to be easy. We worked, you know, the first 5 years, we worked 6 days a week, very long hours, had a lot of other relationships get compromised and trouble. But I mean, it was, we believed in what we were doing, and we knew it was going to be hard. But yeah, I think Daniel's advice is right on. If you don't try, you'll never know, and it's going to be difficult, but it's doable. You can do it.
Yeah, I think that leads us into our next question of what would you say the most difficult aspect of starting your own business is?
Oh man, these questions are great. I mean, the challenge of knowing when to scale is really, really difficult, because you have to put the cart in front of the horse. You have to bet on yourself and make big investments. And I think that's where a lot of businesses stop. They're scared to, you know, and for us at the beginning, this is a true story, you know, the slide I skipped over, that was us when Dwell on Design used to be a more kind of prestigious show. We split a 10 by 10, and I think it was going to cost us less than $1,000, but that was terrifying. And we made that. And then the next year it was ICFF. And that was going to probably, you know, and we slept on our friends' floors and did whatever we could to kind of lessen the burden of how expensive it was. But we knew we needed to be in New York, and we needed to be relevant on a larger scale than where we are out here. So I think, yeah, just trying and being willing to bet on yourself and know that there's a lot of moments where it's absolutely terrifying, and that never really goes away. That's the truth.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today, but I do have one final question. I'd love to hear from each of you any last words of wisdom or advice that you have for the students listening in today. And maybe Dan, we could start with you.
I mean, again, to reiterate what I've said multiple times already, don't underestimate the power of just taking that first step and trying something, getting your hands dirty, and just, you know, if you do choose to make something, to actually produce a product, the overwhelming trend of the last decades has been outsource everything. I just would really, I think the world would be a better place if more people would back away from that a little bit. I think we're seeing a lot of talk of that in the news right now. And even though it might seem harder, it's so much more fulfilling. So yeah, that's it for me.
I would say, I guess two things: get out there, experience new things. Traveling and seeing other things makes you a better designer. And then also just designing without building. I mean, you don't have to build it faithfully exactly how it's going to be manufactured, but you need to be involved in creating 3D representations of the things you're designing. And it always helps to just get involved in the building of the things that you're designing as far as you can, you know, as close to the real thing as you possibly can. It's just absolutely critical and a big part of our story, for sure. That's all.
I think it's, you know, talking about anything that is looking into the future right now is so strange. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the disruption, and not at the expense of anyone's loss or tragedy or personal hardship that's created by this, there is going to be a lot of opportunity and a lot of changes in design. And that I know that's something we've been talking about a lot, you know, is just kind of weathering a bit of a storm, and then excited for kind of the disruption and opportunity that's created on the other side. And I think just we're excited about design right now. We're excited about what it's forcing us to look at and kind of challenging ourselves in new ways. And I think for whether you're still a student or launching your career, it's a cool time to be a designer. Also scary and everything else. But yeah, that
and to be an entrepreneur. I mean, we started this in the middle, you know, the depth of the last recession, and you'll hear this said, and it's absolutely true. There's no better time to start a business than in a recession.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's such a cool experience, and like I said, we're all open to answer more questions. You can email, you can call. We love connecting with students and people that are kind of at your stage. So thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it, and best of luck, and take care to everyone.
Thank you. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming on today and giving such an insightful presentation. It was truly a treat to get to see the behind the scenes of Cerno. So thank you. Students, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you want to learn more about Cerno, you can visit cernogroup.com or their Instagram at Cerno_group. If you want to learn more about The Original Americas, you can visit our website, theoriginalamerica's.com, or our Instagram at theoriginalusa. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.